What's up, Duke fans, and welcome to another episode of Duke Blue Central, the podcast bringing you all things Duke basketball, and we're here talking about a great win for the Duke Blue Devils tonight, February 21st. Duke Blue Devils were able to defeat the Miami Hurricanes at Miami 84-55, a dominating win for the Blue Devils on an away floor, something that we could get really used to as Duke fans, the way the Blue Devils played tonight. This was a game Duke was only favored in by about 5.5 leading up to it, and then news came down that Miami was going to be out two of their normal starters, the big one being Nigel Pack, an awesome guard for Miami that shoots the lights out. When he was out for the game, Duke moved to about a 7.5 point favorite. Duke easily covered that tonight, winning by 29. And the game, after the first couple of minutes was never really even in question for the Blue Devils. And to start off this game, man, it's mainly going to be all positives here tonight. Not a lot of negatives to talk about for the Blue Devils tonight when you beat an ACC opponent like this on the road in this dominating fashion. Now, before we just dive into the celebrating Duke that this podcast episode is going to be, let's not get it twisted here. Miami was really shorthanded. You know, I always talk about how Pitt's win at Cameron Indoor against Duke really doesn't mean too much to me because of the circumstances of the game. Duke was down two of their more important starters, and Pitt was able to just shoot the lights out, especially Hinson, who was able to hit, I think, about 7 threes in that game. If I'm a Miami fan, I could say something very similar about this game, other than the fact that, Duke is a higher ranking opponent than Pitt is. Duke would have been favored in this game if Miami was at full strength, whereas Duke was still a favorite against Pitt, even minus 2 starters. But similar situation in this game to where Duke found ourselves against Pitt, and Nigel Pack being out really does affect Miami's game plan. Miami, as long as Larrañaga has been there, has been all about shooting the three, playing fast, getting guards who can make really tough shots. They've been able to have a lot of success with that, and tonight missing their best guard obviously had a huge effect on the game. However, I still think Duke would have won this game in hand, even with Pack in the lineup, if that's worth saying. I think defensively, Miami is not this elite defensive team, and I just think Duke would have been able to hold Miami under the 84 that we ended up scoring. Just the way Duke was shooting the ball tonight, I don't think anybody beats us. So there's still a lot to celebrate, but you have to throw that caveat in that if we see Miami again at full health, the game will be very, very different just because of the shooting that he brings. Now, to move on to all of the positives in this thing, just what a performance from the Blue Devils. To have this kind of game at this point in the year, it's the type of game that the committee can look at. It really increases our net ranking, winning by this much on the road. It really impressive win this late in the season. And again, we said it last year. We said it we're going to say it this year again. John Shire's Duke teams seem to really get it going at the right time. This is 2 years in a row where there have been some questions about about Duke's chances, about the Duke style of play, the identity of the offense and defense, especially last year more than this year. I mean, we still only have 5 losses on the year this season, but still have been questions from some iffy losses and some iffy performances even when we win. But still, here we are in February, and Duke is playing its best basketball, and I think that's something, hopefully, that continues as a trend for Shire, getting his teams prepared to really perform in February and March. Those are the most 2 important months of the year for college basketball. January, December losses, those types of things really get far into the rearview mirror when you start talking about games in March and ACC and NCAA tournament games. And this is when you want your team to play well, and this is when Duke is playing well. They're getting hot They're playing really well, and to go 2 for 3 so far on the road in this extremely important stretch of the Blue Devils season is really, really important. But let's move on to some statistical positives from the game. Duke was able to shoot 45% from 3 this evening, and that is important note here is that Jared McCain went 1 for 6. Our best three-point shooter on the team, I think most people would say, even though I think Roach is statistically the best three-point shooter, if you qualify a certain number of attempts. McCain going 1 for 6 and we shooting 45% from 3 is just phenomenal. And that even includes some misses at the end from Neil Begovic and TJ Power and just absolute garbage time when we were clearing out the bench because we were up by so much. But Kyle Filipowski was able to go 2 for 3 in this game. Like we said, McCain went 1 for 6. Caleb Foster had a good performance tonight, going 3 for 5 from 3. Mark Mitchell hit a 3, top of the key. His three-point shooting has really come along in ACC play. I believe they said something like he was 7 for 15 in ACC play from deep, which is more similar to the mark we saw from last year, whose shot has never looked great, but he was hitting it at a higher clip last year. And just the beginning of this year, he was taking a lot more, and it just wasn't falling. Kind of the latter half of this year, we've definitely seen him tone back on the attempts. He will attempt maybe 1, maybe 2 a game, and those have to be wide open. If he's hitting them at this clip, I say let Mark shoot those. Mark is a smart player. I think he knows when it's okay for him to take that shot and when it's not okay for him to. He was able to hit the one he made, hit the one he attempted tonight. Jeremy Roach went 4 for 6 from 3, just continued just sniper-like performances from Jeremy Roach. This has been maybe the biggest jump in just three-point shooting that I can remember a player making, especially from a junior to senior year. And most players, their biggest jump, I believe, is from their freshman to sophomore year, and then you really start seeing the type of player and the type of shooter in particular they're going to shape up to be. Roach, for his career, I think has been hovered around 34 to 35% from 3. And this year, I think he's all the way up to about 45% from 3 on the season. I'd have to look at it. Yeah, he's up to 47% on the year, which is just 46.2% so his freshman year he shot 28.9%, sophomore year shot 33.7%, actually went down a little his junior year, probably due to some more attempts, but shot 32% and all the way jumped. That is about a 14% increase, all the way up to 46% for Jeremy Roach on the year. This is exactly the type of season that if you're John Shire and you're saying we need Roach to do this for this team, and that's not to mention, I think he leads the ACC in assist to turnover rate. Just this is exactly the kind of season that you would dream up for Jeremy Roach to have this year, being a captain of this Duke team. He is a huge contributor. He's smart with the ball, doesn't cause a lot of turnovers. He passes the ball well, and just maybe most importantly, he is another three-point threat to add to the perimeter. And this perimeter, this guard rotation for the Blue Devils, that is a constant threat from 3. And this is something we talked about preseason, how good this team could be from the three-point line. And early in the year, I thought we struggled with that, in particular in big games. It seemed like our three-point performances were boosted up by how well we shot against just crappy teams. But this year, so far late in the year, in the new year of 2024, they've really turned it on even against good opponents, which is always a good sign to see heading into March. We're going to need this team to shoot well from 3 if we want to go where we want to go, which is to make a run at a 6th national championship for Duke. And Jeremy Roach is a huge part of that, hitting 4 for 6 tonight. Tyrese Proctor, we can give him a little shout out. I think I'm going to talk about him more individually later in the episode as he's kind of been a big talking point over the last few games. But he went 2 for 6 from 3. Way to be aggressive out there and take shots. Another thing, we'll move on and talk about maybe some individual performances late in the episode. But one thing I want to point out, this stat doesn't even feel real. I mean, we out-rebounded Miami 41 to 28, and that's while shooting 52%. So it's not like, we didn't have a lot of offensive rebound opportunities. I mean, they out-rebounded us one offensive rebound, 15-14, but we still had 14 offensive rebound, 27 defensive to 41 total. They had 15 offensive rebounds, actually only 13 defensive rebounds. And for a team that at the beginning of the year, we were talking about being a poor rebounding team and not getting after the ball, to do this against Miami, who has Norchad Omier down low pretty much playing the entire game. I mean, he played 31 minutes tonight, but those minutes he sat, I mean, he was pulled out of the game, I think, with at least 6 minutes left, and just sat because the game was out of hand. Norchad Omier was essentially in this game the entire time, and he's one of the best rebounders in the ACC and in the country. And to smash Miami on the boards like we did was just incredible. And if you look at the totals, pretty even. Ryan Young led the team with 9. Sean Stewart right after him with 7. Guy just is a vacuum on the boards. If you watched him tonight, you can see with the old eye test that he is going to develop into a heck of a rebounder once he gets some more playing times, learns how to not foul so much, and can even put back some shots. He'll be a heck of a force down low for us if it's nothing but putbacks, because he rebounds the ball so well. Other than that, pretty even on everybody. You know, Proctor and Roach got 3 apiece. Mitchell got 5. Caleb Foster got 3. Jared McCain got 5. Flip got 6. Team rebounding tonight. Great performances on the boards. And, man, it's just so crazy that number's out there. While Duke is able to shoot 52% from the field, we made 28 of 54 shots compared to Miami's 19 of 61, and we're still able to just crush them on the boards like that. We're turning into actually a pretty good, decent rebounding team. And that's something that I don't think a lot of Duke fans would have predicted at the beginning of the year. Next point I want to say is just awesome defense on Norchad Omier, as we we're just talking about him. Again, Miami's shorthanded here, so a lot of the attention was going to shift to Norchad Omier in this game. He's a great player, averaging about 17 and some change points per game. We held him to 9 points, 10 rebounds, still was able to grab 10 boards, was one of the 2, I think, effective players for Miami at getting rebounds. But look, I mean, he was frustrated tonight, and a huge part of that is due to Duke's defense. I think another part is he just had an off night and just missed some shots he would normally make. But even if you were to count those stats, I mean, Duke was able to play really good defense against him tonight, and that's something I was really had interesting thoughts about leading into this game, especially when Miami was still going to have Nigel Pack. Was how is Flip in particular going to deal with a big man of Norchad's size and strength down low? And just to give some praise to Kyle, he played awesome against Norchad. He was able to body him, go straight up, avoid getting fouled or avoid getting fouls called on him. Awesome defense from Filipowski, and this is a great confidence booster for him, saying that, you know, he can keep up with these big centers that might have developed a little bit more than him in the strength department. He can wall up and defend like the best of them. Awesome performance from Flip on the defensive side of the ball. He drew the toughest assignment all night, keeping him out of the paint and keeping him from scoring down low, and he did that at a really high level tonight, which is something that almost no other team can say they did, especially when you're talking about a first-team All-ACC player likely, which is Norchad Omier. Awesome defense from Flip tonight. And just to highlight, I mean, it was hard to pick out a player of the game for this game. Probably give it to Roach just for, you know, leading us in scoring by 1 and going 4 for 6 from 3. Is a huge deal. Also added 3 assists and 3 rebounds onto that. But gosh, a lot of players just played well. Mark had an awesome game early. I think he scored 7 of our first 10 points early in the game. Dunks to Mark Mitchell were just a massive benefit. And Duke's passing in this game is really what separated us from Miami. Again, we finished with 19 assists on 28 made buckets. That is just an absurd number. And Mark Mitchell, if you watch the games where Duke passes particularly well, Mark Mitchell is the benefit. It often plays really well in those games. He is the benefit of a lot of cuts, of a lot of big men passing to him inside for an easy dunk. When we pass the ball well, Mark Mitchell typically scores a lot, and that's what was happening early in the game. It's not like Mark was just going crazy ISO down and low in the post. He had a couple really good offensive rebounds and putbacks early, which is what kind of helped Duke establish a lead and a presence in the paint. Maybe even more than Flip was doing at the time, because he likes to hover around the outside. But when we're sharing the ball well, Mark Mitchell benefits from that game a lot, and that proves true again tonight, him finishing with 15 points. But it just seemed like the offense was really clicking and finding its identity. I tweeted out something in the game that we kind of saw the ideal version of Duke tonight. We saw, a team that was playing inside out, trying to get paint touches, sharing the ball around the perimeter, not a lot of dribbling around the perimeter except for when it got late in the shot clock. Team that wanted to establish a presence in the paint and then work it inside out to one of really any perimeter player. With the lineups that just with the starting lineup with Caleb Foster, Jeremy Roach, Jared McCain, Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski. Other than Mark Mitchell, which he hit a three tonight, you could kick it out to any one of these guys and land on a 40% three-point shooter. So that's something I think maybe at points in the season Duke has fallen in love with a little too much, just knowing how well we shoot. We tend to try and shoot threes early to establish that, when that strategy really works best when you can establish the paint first and then kick out to those shooters, and then it's pretty much game over for anybody that you're playing. Because if you can establish that paint, get into the other team's head that they need to run down to the paint instead of defending the three-point line, then you're getting open threes, which this team is highly, highly unlikely to miss, even if one guy's off. McCain, who had a career night against Florida State, was 1 for 6 tonight from three, and we still finished 45% from three. That shows you the type of shooters and the type of guards that we have, and the big men that were shooting well. If you lump Mark and Flip, they were 3 for 4 from three tonight. So, but this team functions the best when we're playing inside out. When Kyle Filipowski and Mark Mitchell can establish strength and physicality in the post, can establish that they're going to fight for offensive rebounds, they're going to be looking for shooters on the outside. And the fact that, if Flip can establish himself first as a post player, that's, I think, what we saw good from him tonight was early in the game. He wasn't necessarily just hovering around the three-point line like he sometimes does. He had some really good post moves tonight. He had one in particular, a spin into a reverse dunk. That was one of his plays of the year, I think. But if Flip in particular can first establish himself as a threat to the low post, it bodes really well for his chances to get wide open looks from the outside, which is where he's going to hit higher than, he's going to hit 35% or higher of his wide open threes, as he has consistently all year. It's when he's taking the pull-up jumpers, without touching the paint, I think that his shooting numbers dip. So that seems to be the strategy, and I think the coaching staff is in line with that. I think the players have bought into that, and I think that we're seeing this offense in particular blossom. The defense has played pretty well all year. We've had some games where we've not had great performances, but we know what this Duke defense is. We don't have a guy like Lively who's going to just block everything that goes into the paint. But Duke is a solid defensive team. We play really physical, especially if we don't foul. We play really physical. We block shots. We can create steals. Pretty much all of our guards, especially another shout out to Jeremy Roach. The improvement he's had on the defensive end has been incredible. He was a liability at some points defensively in the past few years, and he's become one of our better statistical defenders. If you look at some of the top defensive lineups, he's in a lot of them in the conference and in the country. Roach has been an awesome perimeter defender, but especially when you're looking at guys like Tyrese Proctor, who are big guards with size, who can guard kind of that 1 through 3, even small 4s. You've got another guy in Mark Mitchell who can guard anybody on the court, even a guy like Norchad Omier, who's a big, strong, physical big man down low. He handled him well tonight. Duke, we know what they are defensively. But it was the offense that I think had to grow into itself. And we're seeing kind of, obviously, we're not going to shoot like this every night, but we're seeing tonight we saw kind of what the formula is striving after. Now, again, we're not going to play like this every night, and the challenges for Duke moving forward is, what happens when those three-point shots don't fall and teams start to let you shoot threes and you still can't hit them. Then we're talking about, all right, we might have to switch to, really trying to force it inside and draw fouls to get to the free throw line, where we've statistically this year been pretty decent, even with some struggles as of late. But this is the ideal. This is the metric. This is the benchmark. When we're talking about tournament games, when we're talking about the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament, Shire has this game to pull up on film and say, this is what happens when we play really well. And it's not, look, I don't want to cut too much credit off and just say, it was a good three-point shooting night. That happens and, whatever. The reason it was a good three-point shooting night is because it was a good passing night, because it was a good inside-out night, even because we played defensively well. That all contributes to it being a good three-point shooting night. It's not just because your three-point shooters were on or off, like a lot of people, including myself, have been guilty of saying, it was just an off night or if it was an on night. Sometimes that definitely happens. But you do things on offense like passing that contributes to your three-point shooting. And all of that was clicking tonight. So, if we have a bad three-point shooting night, just pull up this film if you're John Shire. Remind the guys how good they can be when they share the ball and when they find guys in their spot and when they play inside out. And kind of to end this episode, I might highlight an individual player. I thought Proctor really had a good bounce-back game. He, of course, didn't play against Florida State with the concussion that he suffered against Wake Forest at home. But I was really encouraged by what I saw of Proctor. With Proctor tonight. He came off the bench. Going to be really interesting to see what Shire does, whether to start him, bump him back up into a starting spot, or to keep Caleb Foster, just because of the chemistry that we've been having with Foster playing. Foster even played more minutes than Proctor tonight, Foster played 28 minutes to Proctor's 23. Some of that obviously is probably injury management, making sure Proctor was still good to go and recovering and making sure he recovers. And when a game's this out of hand, you don't have a need to play him that much, especially when the team's playing so well with or without him on the floor, even though he had a great game. A lot of guys getting a lot of minutes was a thing for tonight's Duke team. Sean Stewart finished with 11 minutes. Ryan Young finished with 8. Blake's finished with 8. We were working the bench, and that's what we needed to do against a shorthanded Miami team. When you're up that big, make sure you give your guys some rest and some time to recover, because we got a big one on Saturday against Wake Forest. But to continue, Proctor had an awesome game. I thought he played well defensively. Again, 2 for 6 on threes, finished with 4 makes, 9 shots, made both of his free throws, finished with 5 assists, 3 rebounds. Those are the numbers. 1 steal, only 1 turnover for 12 points. That's a good Tyrese Proctor stat line. If he's able to do that for the rest of the year, obviously we want to see him make more shots and things like that, but especially in a game like this where your teammates are playing so well, it was a great game from Proctor. And, I've talked about him in the past few episodes being aggressively minded and things like that. He had some moments tonight where he really was aggressive, took shots, they went in, or even was just aggressive in the way he was driving to the rim and then able to pass, how he was able to get those 5 assists. Great comeback game for Proctor after having what I would call a few very lackluster performances from him, and I think he would call him that as well. Great to see him getting back in the fold. I trust Tyrese Proctor. I know from seeing him firsthand in the ACC tournament, in the NCAA tournament, this kid knows how to turn it on when the lights come on. And I know there's going to be people that say, think about Carolina and some other games this year, but I trust in Tyrese Proctor that he will turn it on when it matters most. And right now what matters is him just continuing to build the chemistry with the team, continuing to find his role on this team as we prepare for a tournament run. But I trust that when the going gets tough, Proctor is going to turn it on, and I believe in him. So that's all I got for you today. Great win. Not a lot of negatives, not a lot of bad things to say about Duke after this one. We have a massively important game at Wake on Saturday. Wake Forest is a great team, as we talked about before when we played them in Cameron. They had a cold shooting night from three. I expect them to shoot better from three, even though I think that was again in part because of Duke's defense. I think Duke can still defend them from three very well, but I expect them to shoot better than they did against us in Cameron. They'll also have their home crowd with them. That is just a massive game, and I think can be a tone setter for how Duke is going to finish out this year, or at least this regular season. So that's a big one. Be on the lookout for that. But thank you again, all of you, each and every one of you, so much for listening. Appreciate you all. If you want to give the podcast some help, you can leave a rating wherever you're listening to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, all that good stuff. You can follow me on Twitter over at Duke Blue Central. Love to interact with you guys there. Thanks so much for listening again. Go Blue Devils.